Sorry, you asked something?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Everybody sit comfortably, spine erect, eyes gently closed. Shift your awareness to the center of the eyebrows. The Jyotishmati, the light of awareness within. Take a deep breath. Exhale. Let's begin today's session with an opening chant. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaduyitamastu Bhavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's offer our salutations to Sage Patanjali. Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacha Malam Shariram Cha Vaidyakena Vyopakarotam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjali Ranatosmin. Welcome everyone for our study of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So until now, we started on the study of Astavangani, the 8 limbs of yoga. We've studied the first, actually the 7, the first 7, the 5 of the Bahiranga Sadhana, which are Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara. And then we continued with the Antaranga Sadhana with Dharana, which is the concentration. And then we've also studied Dhyana, which is meditation. And for the meditation, we've also studied a combination of Patanjali Yoga Sutras with the Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, which is the Samyama Yoga, and Dhyana Yoga. So both are very complementary. One is talked about the meditation on what it is, and then the Bhagavan Sri Krishna and Bhagavad Gita talks a lot more about some of the hum of the house of the things. So does anybody would want to share your takeaways from what is meditation? What is dhyana?
So if I may, meditation, in my opinion, is quietening the mind and observing what thoughts you have.
That's one. The quietening of the mind is absolutely right, and observing what's going on. So there are 3 different things. One is mindfulness, about observing and then trying to observe the thoughts, but also shift your attention to only one thought, which is about the dharana, which is the concentration. And meditation as Patanjali defined. Does anybody want to share the Yoga Sutra, if you remember, how Patanjali defined meditation?
I don't know the exact words, but it's having the same picture or the same image. The image from next to next doesn't change. It's constant.
Yeah, that's absolutely. It says tatra pratyaya. Pratyaya is the image that the chitta, which is the mind, presents to the purusha, which is the consciousness within. When that pratyaya remains the same from this moment to the next moment, ekatanata, from this moment to the next moment, and that is the state of meditation. So when the number one, your mind is fixed on one thought, and then that's one thought or one image, and that image continues to remain the same from this moment to the next moment to the next moment. And then the moments where the frame remains the same, when the image is presenting the same, so when the mind is presenting the same image, that is known as meditation. That is meditation, dhyana. And then we don't meditate, or we don't work for meditation, but rather you allow it to happen. what the work that we do is in the mindfulness, which is the dharana. That is where you're trying to focus your mind from parsing or interpreting many different images and then presenting that to the image. What we do is we reduce that to one thought, and then that one thought, eventually when the mind becomes established in that state where it is only interpreting, or when it is presenting that one image to the Purusha, and then that basically is just like sleep. It's a state that you actually have. So what we're going to do today is we're going to continue the journey on the Antaranga Sadhana, which is the inner practices, where we're going to focus on the last limb, Samadhi. And then we'll also talk about one of the greatest yogic power that we all could attain, which is Samyama. Okay.
Sunil, if I may, one point. I think a lot of times we assume meditation means sitting and closing the eyes. A meditative state can be attained. Obviously, meditation is a state that is attained with the practice sadhana. And some of these in the people who are in devotion, like Annamacharya, who sings, is in meditation 24/7, all the time. And whatever that comes out of his mouth has the utmost beauty of words. They're very synced. The words are synced. Obviously, it has its own pattern. A lot of us talk, but it doesn't have any specific pattern like raga, thala, whatever. But people who are in meditation, when they talk, apparently it is in that kind of pattern. There is a pattern to it. I think I was speaking to one of the people, and he was telling I think there is some kind of song. It has a math in it, and in diagonal, in different ways you look at it. There's a prime numbers, escalating prime numbers. There is a diagonal pattern, and it just comes out of his mouth without even thinking. But there's a mathematics involved in it because they are in meditative state all the time.
So beautifully said. In fact, absolutely, when you are in that meditative state, in fact, it's not only the meditative state, you actually move into the next state, which is samadhi. And we'll talk about what's the difference between dhyana and then when you go deeper into that meditative state, you essentially enter into a samadhi state. And then at that time, they do not actually are planning for this, like what you said, the rhythm or chandas or the meter or anything, which is like whatever it comes out, it actually has a magical rhythm or a meter to it. And I think it is Tyagaraja, right? Which is one of the things that they would have is annini vanachu antarangamuna tinnaga vediki teluskuntinaya. So what it means is when I'm actually only deeply contemplating within, then in my inner sadhana, in my antaranga sadhana, that's when I realize that you are that infinity, you are within me all over. So the Sunilji, I think you shared it so well. And like what we said, right? Meditation is not about being sitting in one place and then looking doing tapas. It's actually meditation is you can be doing any one of the activities, like some of these greatest devotees that we talk about, whether it's Annamacharya, Tyagaraja, or Meera, or every one of them, or Tulsidas. For them, that tatra pratyaya, the pratyaya is that image of the God, or the thought of the God is what they are always contemplating upon. And then then the words just essentially become just kind of an artifact, but their attention is very much rooted in that one image of the God that they dedicated their lives to. It's a beautiful thought. So what we're going to do is let's look at Samadhi.
I have a question. What does contemplating mean? Like, I know the literal meaning. What does actually one contemplates inside mean? Like, is there in this concept? I just want to know what does contemplating mean.
Contemplate is, one way to perhaps look at it is it's also like japa, right? Contemplate is your mind is contemplated. So what is contemplating? Contemplating is you're in deep thinking or in the deep thought. When you're contemplating on one single object or the pursuit or whatever the thing that you're actually talking about, then you basically literally are trying to be one-pointedness. The ekatattva abhyasa, when this contemplation is pointed towards one thing, that's also known as ekatattva abhyasa, right? You can contemplate on many different things. The contemplation could be very broad on things, or contemplation could be when the contemplation actually is pointed to one object of the pursuit. That could be the God, or that could be the divine, or that could be a work that you are actually looking at it. And that contemplation is essentially the reflecting of the mind power, the thought. And then when the thought actually is pointed towards one object, I think that's when it becomes meditation. Did that answer your question, or was I being vague?
Yes.
Yeah. So the contemplation is literally, it's all about, we are referring to all the mind's tendencies or the mind's activities. And when that contemplation is pointed towards one thing, that's when it can be meditation. Then let's actually, so all these Antaranga Sadhana Sutras are in the Vibhuti Pada, the third chapter. Second chapter, Sadhana Pada, ended with the Pratyahara, which is all the Bahiranga Sadhana. So we talked about, Dharana, which is Deshabandhasya Chittasya Dharana, which is the concentration. And then the next sutra is about Dhyana, which is about Tatrapatya Ekatanata Dhyana. So Patanjali doesn't waste any time. Then he immediately gets into what is Samadhi. Samadhi. This is a beautiful definition. Artha ardhamatram nirbhasham, ardhamatra nirbhasham. Tadeva ardha matram nirbhasham. Nirbhasham swarupa shunyamiva samadhi. What it actually means is the ardhamatra, the object that you are contemplating on, the object that you are meditating on, the object that you're meditating on, when only that remains, and swarupa shunyamiva, when you lose the sense of the I. In other words, when your meditation goes so deeper that you lose the sense of your own being, and then you simply you get immersed with the object of your meditation, or what your perception, that is known as meditation, that is known as samadhi. So the meditation is so deep that you cease to exist yourself. You become the object of the pursuit, and that is when it's known as samadhi. And in fact, there is in one of the Upanishads, I think, there is a beautiful setting that they say, which is like Sharira Vishaya Loka, which is Sharira is the subject, Vishaya is the object, and Loka is the setting. So there is always this duality of the relationship, the subject and the object, right? Subject and object, where, you're, for any sense of, for any sensation, for any pleasure, there is always duality, which is like, karta and the karma, the subject and the object. But when we are actually meditating on, like, for example, let's say the God, you're meditating on a God, on the thought, or let's say if you're in singing, if you're singing one song, and if that is what you're getting so deeper into the meditation, and then suddenly, sometimes we actually see people lose the sense of their own identity. And the only thing that remains in that situation is the thing that they are personifying. If you're singing a song, only the song remains. And we can even see, like, sometimes, when we refer to some of these greatest Olympic athletes, or, the football players, or even cricket players, what they say is, in their practice, at some point, they lose who they are in that moment. All that remains is, like, for example, Sachin Tendulkar or MS Dhoni, what I hear some of them times that they say is, they're so deeply meditating on, they're intensely focused on that, on the ball that they're about to hit, and they lose the sense of who they're not aware of their body, they're not aware of the thing. Their only thing that they focus on is the ball and then how to hit the bat. And the same thing, the Tulsidas or the Mirabai or Tyagaraja or Annamaya, their meditation is so strong and so deep, and they basically lose the awareness of their own being, and then the only thing that remains is the object that they are pursuing, and this is known as samadhi. Any thoughts, comments? Did it ever occur to you in your pursuit of something?
I think we do sometimes. I think experience. I think most of us experience when we are intensely focused on something, we realize the time passed without us knowing. We think we spent only a short period, but a good amount of time has passed. How did I reach here? You were intensely focused on something, and then suddenly you realize, how did you reach there? So I think these are probably glimpses into that kind of state, probably.
Absolutely. I mean, we see that with some of the kids as well, when they are, some of those, self-driven kids, when they are pursuing something, they lose track of time. I mean, in fact, sometimes, even says like, hey, you're not eating, you're not sleeping, but they are so intensely passionate about, what they're actually doing. They lose the sense of everything else around them. The only thing that remains is the ardhamatram. Tadeva ardhamatra nirbhasham. Tadeva ardhamatra nirbhasham. Ardha matra, which is like the ardha is whatever you are actually the pursuing. Only that remains. Bhasham swarupa shunyamiva. Swarupa shunyamiva, which is like, the your own sense of identity, it just becomes nothing.
I think there was an interesting story on Vivekananda. Apparently, one day he was, I think he was just walking on the street in the middle, and somebody has to grab him off the road, saying that you're going to die. Somebody's going to hit you. He lost sense of his own awareness, but he's still walking. He said that I see myself everywhere, in the car, in the road, everywhere. So he doesn't have his sense of his own identity. So he's dissolved into infinity.
Absolutely. The dissolution, at some level, the duality is gone. There is no subject or object. And you essentially become the subject, and Sharira and Vishaya become one. That Advaita, the duality, essentially become one. And then essentially you dissolve yourself, and then you become that. So you are achieving that sense of oneness. And that in that oneness, in that samadhi, is when some of these, greatest, Sunilji, like what you're saying, some of these Tyagaraja Kirtanalu, Annamaya Kirtanalu, they actually come out of this samadhi state experience. Because, when they are looking at them and the God, you cannot go that deep. You cannot get into that flow state where the richness and the profoundness of the meaning that they infuse in their words, it cannot just happen when you are actually in this state of the separation of the duality, right? Which is the beautiful thing. Anything else that anybody would want to share?
Sorry, in that state, isn't something else is working through them at that point of time? Like it's not them, because I think at that point Atma and Paramatma becomes one, because it's functioning at a totally different level. Like Ramanujacharya, right? Like he could pour out formulas, but he couldn't prove it. It just came out.
Absolutely. That's when. Actually, finish your thought. Sorry.
Yeah. So it's is that our striving to become, then the people who have gone to that stage, they have detached completely the living, like family and other things. Like how do you still, it's very difficult once you reach there. I don't know, like how do you sustain what you have to do for a living, like, 3 meals a day, and everything becomes irrelevant at that point of time. So I think somewhere reading this, I mean, wanting also, we don't want to go there because
I see. You're scared to go there. I see.
yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna, like, we'll all become like Harishchandra, and we'll leave our houses and go. So I think there is also an embedded fear which keeps us be part of this Maya in some ways, and go through the cycle. I don't know.
I see. That's actually a good point for us to reflect on. And this is where, let me first talk about what is happening. So is it a supernatural power that's actually acting through them? It's not them, right? What is them, or who am I, or what is powering through us? Like according to Sankhya, or according to Vedas or Advaita, and according to the yoga, what we say is our real identity is Nitya Suchisuka Atma. It's only the avidya, one of the kleshas, that basically creates this illusory boundary around us. That boundary identifies ourselves with this physical costume and the mind. And then once you identify yourself with this body and this mind, and that's when all your you get more attached to the next klesha, which is like the asmita. Asmita is like, me, my family, my kids, my wife, my girlfriend, and my job, my this thing. And once you have this separation of me versus something else, and that results in all kinds of chatter. So all the actions that you do, you're always in this negotiation of, am I optimizing for my circle and versus something else? When you're established in avidya and asmita, those actions will always have, the kind of different bondage and so on and so forth. So when you are in this, getting into this samadhi state and the meditative state, what you're consciously trying to do is you're consciously trying to obliterate those boundaries that are created or superimposed, where you identify yourself with this physical, the costume and the mind. So I think that's what Shankaracharya calls as adhyasa. Adhyasa is a superimposed reality. I think once you start obliterating those boundaries, and that's when you have access to tadadrastuhu swarupe avasthanam. Once you keep that superimposed reality, the superimposition, the mask or the filter, you take it off, then your mind doesn't have any separation of the boundary of me and somebody else. And then once you don't have that, then the divinity, the self, start projecting itself in all the actions. And that's when Ramanuja's formulas are rooted in the divine. He did not know what that force is. Other than, you could have just says like, this is a state of yogi, which is like, now I have access to the self within. But his vague interpretation was that he thought that the Devi is flowing through him, or Devi is acting through him. And several of us, we all have access to this energy, this energy, because that is who we are. That is who we are. Tadadrastu. It's only when, but we all have to work towards it. Abhyasa vairagya abhyam tannirodha. So it's about how much consciously we are obliterating this boundaries that are rooted in avidya, that we are trying to clean. And then once it's there, we also get access to these supernatural powers. In terms of then, but what does it mean? Once you are in this samsara, in the relationship, you have certain responsibilities. How do you fulfill them? So I think there are a lot of debates that will happen. Like, in fact, there is a beautiful story about Yajnavalkya, and then I think, he has 3 wives. And somebody would ask us, like, once you are married, how can you still be in this, the divine state or the samadhi state? And basically says like, I'm in this relationship, but I have a little bit of, 1 degree of separation. So in other words, I'm actually involved in it, but I'm not trying to optimize my actions to favor my family versus somebody else. So as long as you have that equanimity, to look at everybody, I think, you can actually achieve it. It's very difficult for us because, we've always been conditioned into live our lives in one way, but there are some people who can balance this well, but the balancing act is not just you yourself, right? It is like the partner that you're with should also be able to understand and resonate with that experience. Otherwise, there is a type of conflict. And you talked about there is Ramanujam, and then there is also Ramanujam, right? Who is the Vishishtadvaita, the Bhakti Marga.
Yeah. Who's the mathematician? I was talking about the mathematician.
Yeah, you're talking about it. Yeah, that's the formulas. I think you're talking about it. But there is also the Vishnu. Vishnu's one of actually the pioneer of Bhakti movement.
Vishishtadvaita.
Right? Vishishtadvaita, the pioneer of the Bhakti movement, actually. And I mean, from what I know, which is like at some point, I believe he actually dropped his wife at his in-laws place. Perhaps, he realized that there is no resonance in what he's trying to do. And then, some of those things, then apparently he went and dropped his wife at his in-laws place, and then so that he could focus on his pursuit. I think, some people, I think the other day I was having dinner with Shriramji and Ekaji, and then they were sharing with me of the story of Yajnavalkya. I think Yajnavalkya has, I think, 3 wives. And then the 3 wives, and then one day it was just like, hey, I need to go deeper into my pursuit of dhyana and samadhi and realization of the self. And then he wanted to go to forest. So everybody else was like, hey, if you go, then what is it for me? And, what do you leave with us, or something like that. And then I think there is one wife basically said, like, she basically says, like, you're a very smart man. You're a very smart man. The fact that you chose this over all the other pleasures here, that means that must be the greatest wealth. So let me just follow you. And I want that, whatever you are actually going after, let me also get that. So I believe, both of them then go pursue that self-realization thing. So they both go to forest and live that stuff. So I think it's a balancing act. The more important thing is it's more of a balancing act. It's more of a balancing act. And then I think the most important thing is how do you establish some level of symbiosis? I mean, if you look at Gandhi as an example, right? Gandhi got into his own path. Initially, I believe, with Kasturiba, I think, there was some element of, conflicts, but eventually they kind of settled into some kind of harmonious state, right? I think, a lot of people try to get there. But one of the things that I think, you should do is, I think, if there are some responsibilities that you're taken, I think, you need to do some justice. But there is what is the right definition of justice? And that's also varies in the context, right? Sometimes your kids might say, like, you need to make sure that, you give us all $1 million and then you can do whatever it is. So one could actually question, is $1 million the right amount of justification? So I think that's all subjective. I'm not I'm a struggling seeker myself, but I think, that's a path. Any thoughts? Sahanaji, do you have anything to share?
And also this pursuing thing, right? Basically realizing, I mean, it is all about this whole sadhana is just those ripples that are going around, just observing them and having them settle down. What I mean to say is the fountain, the source is already there, right? For me, the difference, the clear separation between me and the mind is so very simple and clear. I mean, I may be blessed with so many masters, or I don't know what to say about it, but it is so very clear, the difference between, oh, this body, this breath, these thoughts, these desires. Okay, whatever the name, fame, da, 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 da. So the entire ecosystem of all of it falls into. mine, and me is so very clearly separate from it. So I think that is all this self-realization is all about. And this is not trying to, and this doesn't need time actually. This needs only courage. This doesn't need time. This only needs courage. As one of my mentors rightly said, it's just you and taking delta steps at a time, just experimenting with the truth. And these used to happen when I was 18. I was listening to these interesting tapes from these enlightened masters. The first thing that happened was this experience of separating between me and mine. Fortunately, that happened first for me. And second came these tapes, whatever, these audio cassettes. And when I'm listening to them, I'm like, okay, all sounds great, but you know what? Let me experiment one piece at a time. So just took one, experimented with it, checked it out. It seems that I am wrong and they are right. Then, okay, then let me take the next point that they said. Right. So similarly, moving on with that, Jai Guru.
Yeah, Ramakanth Guru, namaskaram. Actually, always, such a pleasure and blessing to have your presence here. It's absolutely, I think, this is where I think, the Patanjali established, or he put the right setting right at the beginning, which is that, who am I? I mean, I think, this is all of us actually go through it. And like what you said, it's nothing about the time when you get to this realization. At some point, it's not a process. It's not a matter of time. It's a matter of the courage to actually to go seek your true identity, who you are. And then once you go deeper in who am I, then that's
Just to
when,
add, right, one day, the other day, sorry to interrupt you,
go
the
ahead,
other
please.
day, just a 30-second thing. I can forward that too. So there is this gentleman from Sweden or wherever, right? So what he has done is, he's a software engineer like us, whatever XYZ dollars per hour, whatnot. He just said, done, I'm done with this. So all he did was he started walking from Sweden to India. It took him 4.5 years. Okay. And he goes on, he sleeps under the sky, he eats what people give, and then goes for these visas wherever is needed. So literally he walked through, and I will send you that uh, video to all of you on this call. Just continuous tears of joy flowing through my eyes. I couldn't stop. It is like Janma's kind of tapasya this gentleman does, right? So it doesn't matter where I am onto this. Last 30 years I have been learning this yoga or teaching this yoga, but I see this gentleman very simply just left things like that and walked. That's all, right? So this whatever I told about courage is like a digital step that he took, very straightforward, right? He said, forget about all this. What happens here? Let me see. And when we were talking, उसमें कोई किसी ने पूछा हमको कि अभी अभी क्या कर रहे हो आप? Then he said, Ganga Maya, and he learned all the Hindi. Basically, he speaks only Hindi, right? So he says, मैं गंगा मैया के आसमान ऊपर है और गंगा मैया के गोद में मैं सो रहा हूँ बस. That's what he said. Believe me, it struck all my cells in the body were like totally shivering when I heard that. With that, back to you, Jai Guru.
That's literally, in fact, this is a thought that occurred to me, and that's why sometimes referred as the 10, the 10. The best way to actually have that realization is you make yourself zero in this, and then that's when the infinite courage and the infinite the realization or the path toward the realization that happens. So I think when you make a conscious effort to become zero in the world of physicality, the more you go towards zero deliberately in the with focused effort, and then with meditation and then samadhi, and then that's when it tips the other way. Then you become a lot more closer to the infinity, and then all the magic is going to happen. I think the problem is we are scared of actually going to that zero. And we try to hold on to these little things and the things that you cannot actually hold. And eventually the truth actually prevails. The prevails is we all become zero at some point. We all become zero at some point. And sometimes, you carry some of this, carry forwards, and then eventually you settle that into zero. And then when you become zero, and then that's when you become, Brahman, you realize it's Brahman. And it's a perfect math actually. But there are some, like this, Swedish dude, he dropped everything and he started walking. And then the infinite start reflecting through their thoughts and actions. So, I mean, that's a beautiful thought, just like one has to become zero before becoming zero. And then that means, you're literally obliterating the boundary of your me, mine, and this ego and asmita. And then once you obliterate that, then you become that elevated soul. And then that's when Tyagaraja, Anandamaya, the Swedish guy, or Ramanujam, all those things or Ramana Maharshi, Buddha, Sai Baba, all those things start or even sense of Einstein, and those things happen. So then the Patanjali gets into, this is the ultimate secret of yoga. Trayam ekatra samyamaha. Trayam ekatra samyamaha. These three inner practices, dharana, which is an one-pointed or the focused mind, meditative mind, and immersive mind. When you engage in all these three things simultaneously, that's when the real divine magic actually starts happening. That's when you get into samyama. We already talked about yama is control. Samyama is total control of the mind. So at that time, you're literally planting a thought in your mind at will. You're planting a thought at will. And then that is the only thing that you're intensely focused on. That's the only thing that you're meditating upon. And then that's the only thing, tadeva ardhamatra nirbhasham swarupa shunyameva samadhi. Only the thought remains and nothing else. You don't have a sense of you. And then that's when the samyama is the secret to excellence. And Patanjali says, in that state of samyama, whatever you're pursuing, that is a sure shot victory. It's a secret to excellence. And that is the true potential for all of us, the samyama. And this is the secret to success, secret to excellence, that I believe we all have to share with kids and adults and everybody, so that they have the opportunity to discover their potential, and then they can create these magical outcomes around us. I think this is Patanjali's declaration and the ultimate power of yoga that we all could attain. Samyama. Have you any of you heard about Samyama before?
No, not me.
No, Ji.
So this is ultimately everything that we built so far. It kind of leads into this. That's the power. But you cannot get here without nurturing and mastering all the other limbs. For the mind to be in this ekagrata and the meditation and the immersive thing, we need to constantly obliterate all these other things. You need to be rooted in good yama principles. Your conduct needs to be ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, and you need to be very much in the niyama principles, which is saucha, santosha, tapaswadhyaya, ishvara pranidhanani. And then your body needs to be in that angalagam state where body doesn't become a hurdle in your process. In whatever you're actually doing, then you need to have good prana energy. And then you also need to be balanced and in the consumption. You're not rooted in consuming for your sense of pleasure, the pratyahara. And then once those bahiranga sadhana prepares your vessel, and then you go deeper into your antaranga sadhana, which is Dharana+Dhyana+Samadhi. And then once you are in that mode, then you can then become a Tom Brady, or you can become a Sachin Tendulkar or MS Dhoni or the Kohli in whatever you're actually doing. And the samyama, and as we continue to study the Samyama, Patanjali also talks about what are the different powers that you can get with Samyama, how you can actually do this. But this is the skill that we need to do it. Unfortunately, in today's world, with all these weapons of mass distraction, people cannot even do a simple mind, we cannot even get a focused mind. And then you cannot get into the meditating on the activity, and then put that intense focus on meditation so that you are immersed in what you're pursuing. And we sometimes see with some people around that, and we for sure we actually see their successes and excellence. It almost feels like supernatural, but that is the capability that is there within, that is latent within all of us. It's just that we are not letting our mind, we don't have that Samayama, we don't have that total control of our mind to realize that supernatural force within us. And in fact, Patanjali declares at the beginning, right? Tadadrashtuhu, you are nothing but that divine force within.
I think one thing, Sriniji, to obviously once we get into this state, looks like some kind of portal opens that takes us into different state. Maybe it is some kind of different dimension. Maybe quantum physics may help us understand. Because when I'm a big fan of this quantum mechanics, so I read a lot of these topics on it. It amazes me. Like once it is still a very objective science, it's not a subjective level subjective level thing. So, but I think that is driving us more towards this quantum mechanics is driving more towards the Brahman, the Sanatana Dharma concepts. And another thing, at least this is my belief as a physician as well. So until we get this yama niyama, nothing else matters. So nothing, yeah. So yoga, asanas, pranayams, we can do it. All gymnastics, we can do it. But until we get this yama niyama, the cleanliness and the fitness of the mind has a very tremendous control on the body. And the way the neurons work, they rewire, the hormones gets released, all this is controlled at the mind level. And nobody can point to us where is the mind. Obviously, it is another dimension than physicality, physical dimension, mental dimension, and spiritual dimension. So obviously, when you use that mind, we open that portal towards that higher dimension. But if we close that mind, and it's a corrupt mind, selfish mind, obviously, we are just attached to physical things. Then obviously we are not going to go to the second dimension. So forget about third dimension. So 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 yeah, I think that's why most of us, I think, as Ramakanth was telling, it's just that ignorance is a barrier for us, and we are very afraid to let it go, because we want all these things. We know to some degree that these are all immaterial. We will be becoming atoms one day, and atomic fields, obviously electrons, protons, neutrons. So we know that, but still we don't let it go. We still accumulate these things, and this attachment to these things will cause our ego to only build up. And as a physicians, we see like people doing harm to their patients. Just greed and all those things. So they're very, very attached to these things. So until we get this identity resolved, mind cannot become clean. Until mind cannot become clean, asanas, pranayams, and other things cannot be achieved. That's what I imagine.
Absolutely. I mean, the way you so beautifully said, it's that simple filter, that the duality, me versus you. And once you have this boundary of me, the mind presents this filter of, the me is this, my body, my mind, and then my associations, my possessions, then nothing else actually matters. I think, that is absolutely says like, the basic foundation on which one can actually attain this samyama is yama and niyama, which is like, establishing good outward, good external conduct principles, and then the good self-conduct. Once those two limbs, in fact, when we talk about this cosmic body that we have, this yogic body, I refer to this yama and niyama as like, two legs. Those need to be strong. And then you can actually have asanas and, pranayama. As an example, if you're not establishing the right yama and niyama, you could actually do asanas for different things, like, for almost like a gymnastics. You're probably using asanas, for a good physical thing. And, sometimes I share, right? And in some of these yoga schools that are very much treated this yoga as a physical practice, they're actually getting this yoga to actually indulge in more physical things. They think that they have some powers, to actually go get some, the physical benefits and so on and so forth. And so because they are not established in the right yama and niyama stuff. And the pranayama, I think, they basically think like, it's going to keep me longer, alive. What are you holding on to? You're already eternal. But if you're using pranayama as a way to, extend your lifespan in this realm of physicality, you're going to add some, perhaps, extra seconds or minutes and days, but it's still finite. Whereas, what this yogic system actually tells you is like, you are infinite. Just realize that once you transcend it. And the analogy that you have for the quantum computing is so beautiful. In fact, this limited perception with our mind and the senses, we only access a tiny little dimension of the infinite universe that is out there. But at any point in time, we are simultaneously existing in the multiverse. There are so many possibilities. You are actually exist in so many different dimensions. You yourself on these things, there is a multi dimension, the quantum field that you're actually playing out, and each one leading to a different outcome. It's just that this limited physical mind, it puts a filter. You only get access to a tiny little information, slice of what's in front of you. But once you start getting into opening up this other dimensions by having this total control on your mind, you literally become the master of the mind. Now, today, the mind is the master of you. Once you are in that Samyama, or Patanjali says, Tajjayat Prajjaloka, then you start getting those superpowers to actually, the prajna, the right perception to understand this quantum universe around you. Then you start opening up the real the perception of this universe, both inwards and then the outer world. Today, the intellectual knowledge, the prajna that we think, that we get from schools and, from our jobs, it only gives you access to some of these, the pleasures, but your knowledge is so tiny and finite. Just one slice of one quantum, possibility. One, in fact, we call this as a qubit, right? In the qubit, you're only chasing one binary, and that's the reason, our computers today is like, just operate on 0 or 1. Just a binary bit. But the real universe that you are in the center is a quantum qubit. And there are so many possibilities. So this samyama, these inner practices then give you rise to the right perception of the prajnaloka. That's opening the gateways. And then the next one it also says is, and this prajna, tasya bhumisu vinyogaha. And then this prajna will be revealed to you. You progress that in different stages. You start building gradual powers within you to actually understand this infinite, and it comes in layers and layers and layers. And that's where you're actually going into deeper and deeper in samadhi, which is like, there's, in the next session, we will actually get into what are the different states of samadhi one could actually get. For each set, you're actually getting a different prajna to actually understand the right universe. And then the ultimate thing before you almost get to the kaivalya is Nirbhija Samadi, where you don't really let any of the external sensations, external things, your mind don't follow the external things, but you're only rooted in your own thoughts. It's more of the inner thing. And then, but you have some samskaras, the latent impressions, when you can actually even suppress the latent, when those also becomes completely eliminated, and that's when we actually get into nirbhija. Nirbhija is like there is no seat There is nothing that's within or outside. Then you have this crystal mind. And that crystal mind, when you have that crystal mind, then you realize your power of this master of the universe, the Brahman or Atman, right? And so that's the thing is, let me just wrap it up with this final thing. When you get into that crystal mind, that mind where it doesn't have any basis of internal impressions or external impressions, it's just a purified mind. Just it's like shining as a crystal, and then tasya prashantavahita samskarat. Then the flowing, then the divine starts acting through you, or it's just like then you are in this infinite flow state. Then then that's when you truly realize and act like the Brahman or Atman. And that's what Patanjali reveals. Tasya prashantavahita samskarat. So there is no samskaras, nirodha samskara, vijnana samskara. You're just a crystal, it's a diamond. Any thoughts, Ramakanth?
Yeah, so the other thing also, whenever we talk about this samadhi or any of these interesting words, honestly, right now, whoever we are on this call to, we are all experiencing this already multiple times in a day. Right? But the only thing some of us may know, it is samadhi, some of us not know. And so, and this Atman thing also, it is not like something that has to be achieved. There's nothing like that. It is already, we are already, it's just those layers that are around, and just that switch on light did not happen. Right? So when we are listening to that music, and interestingly, we just lost idea about that time. That's all it's all about. So don't take this samadhi thing as something supernatural, or we have to achieve something. No, not at all. And we are already experiencing it. It is just that we become aware of it is one thing. And second thing is, even we did experience. I mean, now that we are on this call itself tells me that we are all, you along with me, we are all experienced this at least 30 seconds. Right? Forget about a long term, or if not, let's say 4 seconds. We did experience it. Maybe some of us are fortunate enough to know that we are able to sustain it longer. But again, it's just a matter of we saying, okay, 1% improvement is what I'm looking for, just the smallest delta possible. And with awareness, we move. That's all. So with that, right? So this self, please do not take it as if somebody achieved, and there's nothing to be achieved here in sense. It's already there, there basically. It's just that those ripples are lying around. The mirror is not clear. We just take that, put some 409 on it, and clean that stuff a little bit. That's all. So with that, back to you.
That's beautifully said. In fact, we learned about one of the tatakshiyate prakasha avaranam. It's all about, rubbing it off, the smoke. And the filters that we accumulate, we just, let the filters go off. And the beautiful thing that Patanjali says is, in that journey of this wiping off the filters that is already there, just kramanyatvam parinamanyatve hetuhu. I mean, he makes this beautiful declaration. It says like every small step that we are actually doing towards that process, the sadhana that we do, every small step contributes to this major transformation. We may not see the results, but sometimes, as I said, right, we all have this power. We just experience this in few seconds, like in the movie, or when you sing, you get immersed and you lose the sense of you. Or but the movies, you actually get into samadhi, you lose your own sense of your identity. But in that case, the control is given to this external prop. But as you realize that state is your experience state, when you can actually at will, you get into that state, when you become the master of that samadhi experience, you do that. So we'll talk about this again. Kamanyatvam parinamanyatvetuhu. Every small step that we are actually doing, it's actually contributing to this major transformation. So there is no judgment about I'm not getting there, or I don't see any results and so on and so forth. No. It's actually every every minute, every effort that you're putting in this Ashtanga yoga, they're all contributing to that the transformational effect. And you may only see it, like, there's a good metaphor that that Shriramji gives, like when you're boiling the water, there is like, when you're boiling the water, you may not see anything until the water reaches that the vaporization temperature. That's when you start seeing the vapors. But what is all through the process, every molecule is being heated. And then all that thing is contributing to achieving the final transformation. So we all need to be super blessed to be on this journey, that we are all in the right path. We are all getting to the same destination of realizing who we are, that we are nothing but we are the Ramanujams of our own dimension. We are the Tyagarajas of our own dimension, or we are the Stephen Hawkings of our own dimension. So we're all one and the same to realize the same truth. Anybody else that want to share any closing thoughts? And Kanikaji, perhaps on Tuesday, we will love for you to share your own power of manifestation on Tuesday.
Yeah, sure. I will definitely share a few things.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? I mean, what a wonderful session it's been. We kind of covered quantum mechanics, becoming zero, having the courage, the access to Samyama, and and then the ultimate truth is we're already there. It's just there within us. It's just that we're all making that kramanyatvam parinamanyatve hetu. We're making the steps.
I guess my question is, or how do we get out of this illusion?
Yeah, that's I think it starts with being aware of that who are you, which is like, I think it starts with the Yama principles and the Yama principles, and know that who you think today are, once you start identifying yourself with the physical dimension of who you are, and then your things, once you start maintaining a little bit of a distance, that I'm actually much bigger than who I do identify myself with right now. And then I think that starts creating the right transformation. At least that's my perception.
Sure. And once we are done with the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, I think months down the lane, maybe a 15-minute conversation, right? So I can cover that concept. It's a deep questioning, but it's a very simple questioning too. So Shiniji, we will definitely do this months down the lane once we get this bandwidth to do that.
Yeah, actually, because now we are at the right tipping point in Ramakanth, if you actually are open to it, because there are a lot more things, we can actually go into the different Samadhi and Nirbhija Samadi, but I think, at this time, I think, we can actually bring in, your things about, uncoloring the coloring mind, and then what is me, mine, and some of these, the concept, right? I think that kind of crystallizes, it's almost like Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, right? How we can bring many different modalities or the interpretation arriving at the same concept.
Yeah, whenever we feel you think it's apt.
Yeah, actually Tuesday, I think let's actually do it, and then let's actually cover let's shift gears, and then we can actually
just a 15-minute stuff, because it doesn't take long, but the questioning is very deep. Doesn't mean that while eating pakodi too we can listen to it, and as simple as that, right? So it's just that the masters have made it so simple, and these are copied versions, by the way. This is nothing from me, and for me, like I said, I'm just the reverse. Fortunately, the sweet has been given to me first, and then the theory of what a sweet means, probably. So right, for me, I was very fortunate to taste it right away, and then was given a description what the taste was. But for others, I can see the concern, but not a big deal. It's just a simple, playful conversation. We can have chai pe chacha kind of thing. Right, very simple. Jay, back to you.
That's awesome. So let's everybody, let's conclude today's session, which is close close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Exhale. Take a breath for Om. One more time. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yoga palms, cup our eyes. Seek blessings to give us the right vision, the right prajna. And slowly, with a bright smile, open your eyes. Thank you all for sharing your wonderful evening with us. And we'll see you again on Tuesday. And Tuesday is going to be a fantastic session with Ramakanth and the power of manifestation from Kanikashi. Thank you all. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.